Okay,
hello
class.
to Tom's class there. How's it going?
This is Joey Stuckey, and we thought we'd shoot, because we're in the middle of finishing up this album mixture.
Yes.
Talk about the recording process, give you a little taste of what it's like, and then this is obviously a low budget production, so I'm going to scan the studio
Not
just
to
so
the
you can see
blind.
what it's like.
Not to the blind. To the
Well, also
blind,
true.
this looks amazing.
Also true. So anyway, recording process, this album, comparing it to the way they did it back when multi-track recording first started in the 50s and 60s, and then back in the 70s and 80s before digital really yet. Back in the 50s and earlier, on into the 60s, I think, you basically got the entire band in one room
Exactly.
and recorded everything. I
Yeah.
mean, the Beatles, some of the early stuff was recorded on 3 tracks.
That was the thing. One of the important things to realize when you're talking about recording music is that today we think of things. I mean, we have surround sound now where there are, 8 speakers and all this kind of stuff. 8.1, which means 8 speakers plus a subwoofer.
Well, yeah. So a lot of the early Beatles records, drums were on one side, bass was on the other side, and everything else was
they
in
had
the center.
3 tracks.
Yeah.
And so they had a left track, a center track, and a right track. That was my point. Is
Dave Brubeck's Time Out. A lot of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, some of his stuff that way. So anyway, so that's the way they first started recording, and then we fast forward to the 70s or 80s. This is pre-digital now, so you're using magnetic tape, cassette tape, just a bigger version of that, and you had 8 tracks, 16 tracks, 32 tracks, whatever. And at that point, you started recording albums. You might have the rhythm section, drums, bass, and guitar or piano. They would come in and record everything, but they were all on separate tracks. And then you come in and bring in your vocals separately and your background vocals separately.
Or horns.
Everybody was recorded at a different time.
Yeah.
That gave you some flexibility because you didn't have to try to get everybody in the same room at the same time.
And that means that smaller studios could do major projects as well. You didn't have to have a huge space.
Room. Right.
Yeah. And a great example of that, by the way, is Stevie Wonder's Superstition. They recorded all that stuff pretty much separately, except for the main. I believe, if I remember correctly, the initial drum track, the bass, and the initial clav part was all done, and then everything else was brought in. And Stevie Wonder even brought in 3 or 4 drummers and actually mixed different, like the hi-hat from one take from one guy, all that stuff.
Right.
So it was crazy.
Massive editing issues, especially this is pre-digital.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Fast forward to now, and this particular album mixture. It's a real Duke's mixture hybrid kind of process. What we would do is Joey and I would start writing, and this is a rough draft of one of the charts we'll see. And you can see it's kind of rough.
Is there a quiz? Can you give me the third note on the third ledger line there?
Yeah,
ledger
really.
lines?
No.
Okay.
Better question would be, can you read the handwriting?
It says by
But anyway, we would do that, and then we would decide on a tempo more or less. And then I would go back to my studio at the house.
Called the outhouse.
Called the outhouse. You've heard me reference it before. And then I would lay down some basic track. I would do just a rough drum track. I'm not a drummer. But play bass, play piano, and Joey and I would talk about the form, verse, chorus, solo, whatever.
Yeah, we had a pretty good feel of that by the time we were done with the writing.
Especially on this tune. Some of them were a little...
Yeah.
So then I would output the WAV files and then transfer them over to the studio or the net. Joey has an FTP machine here in the studio. We come down here and pull them into his DAW, his software, and then add Joey's parts.
Yeah.
We'd have to kind of set levels a little bit so we hear everything right. And then we would bring in a drummer or whoever else we're going to bring in, and they would record that separately.
Right.
But on a couple of them, this one especially, we ended up playing some of the parts together live in the studio. So it was a real blend of recording techniques from the 50s through the 70s.
And remember just to think of a file or a track as just a placeholder for sound. So it's, each different drum can have its own track. And of course, if you've got multiple keyboards like an organ, a piano, they're all different tracks, and they're typically going to be stereo tracks, so you'll have 2, a left and a right. And but it's right. I think that's the cool thing is talking about, the flexibility nowadays that's so exciting is you can start in one studio and finish somewhere else. So if I live in Macon, but I've got a buddy in New York that I want to play on my album, but he can't fly down here, I can send him a file, he can record to it, he can send me his part, I can load it back up, boom, it's on the album.
Yeah.
And I mean that's the really exciting part. Now sometimes there's a challenge there if you're going to studios where there's different quality in the microphones that they've bought, the money they spent there, or maybe there's different quality in the fact that the person may or may not be educated in the craft.
That's a lot of issues.
Yeah.
It's less and less the equipment nowadays, and more, do they know how to work it?
Yeah, and that's the thing. So I mean, so you do sometimes have to play with that, but for the most part, you did a project like that with our buddy David Klee. Yeah, where he sent you files, you sent him piano files back. And
lives over in Iowa. Little dinky towns in Iowa, Cherokee, Iowa, by the way.
Storm Lake.
Yeah, and Storm Lake's where he teaches.
Yeah.
Think small Georgia towns, and that's about
the
size
corn.
of it. But with corn surrounding them, yeah.
And soy.
But yeah, he would email me the files, and I would call it up, record the stuff, and shoot them to him one at a time. And
then he mixed them all together.
Mixed them down, and it's available on CD Baby and Amazon.
What's it called?
Mi Bonita, Mibonita. David Klee, Klee, if you want to look it up.
Yeah.
Some pretty good piano playing on there, if I do say so myself. But anyway.
But you didn't play that, did you?
Yeah.
That's a joke.
So, but what you see, behind us. Actually, let me run the. Like I said, this is a low budget. So what you got here to Joey's left, there. That is the software that he's running. It's called Sonar.
That's my DAW, digital audio workstation.
And then over farther to the right, those are some of the keyboards that he has that we actually didn't. We used one of them on here.
Yeah.
But a whole bunch of rack gear there. And then to Joey's right is the main mixing board. So you can see a whole bunch of knobs and whatnot.
96 channel board there, Tom.
96 channel. And didn't somebody famous record on that?
Yes. It came from a studio where Annie Lennox was doing work. And she actually started recording, this is called a Soundtracks Jade. She started recording on the Soundtracks Jade, went to mix on the SSL, which is a very famous, the G Plus series SSL, and then decided, the SSL is just not warm enough. I'm going to go back and finish mixing on the Soundtracks. So it's a very warm, very musical board.
And why should anybody know her name?
Well, she was with Eurythmics. Eurythmics. Let me try that again. Eurythmics, yes. Sweet Dreams was their big famous song.
Recorded on that console.
Yeah.
And then you got more outboard gear down there. So basically what happens is we bring them into, now that everybody's dizzy, I'm rotating the camera around, into the software. The software goes, we've got a whole bunch of boxes right here. Point to your converters there. It's kind of behind the...
It's kind of behind the phone and some other stuff. But
all the little blinky lights there. That comes from the computer out to there, and then that goes into the mixing board, which then goes to a power amp, which isn't worth showing you. Oh, they're built into the speakers.
Yeah, they are.
And then the speakers. So we can, you see all those cables, point to the patch bay back there.
Oh, yes. I feel like Vanna White.
I think you should. Yeah, you're not nearly as good looking.
Well,
so the patch cables allow us...
The chicks in your class are drooling right now. Just anyway.
So basically, the sound will come from the software and the computer into, say, channel 1 on the board, and then the sound goes through the patch bay, and then we can route it through an effects box. It could be a limiter or a compressor or a reverb unit or whatever.
And another thing that's interesting about this album, this mixture, we use a variety of both software and hardware that do some of the same things. So we use, like, if we want to create an echo effect, we have boxes over here in this area, I don't know if you can see that or not, but over in that area that create that effect.
Echo.
Exactly, nicely done. But and then we also have some of the same things in the computer that are built into the computer. So we use different ones depending on the flavor that we want. So that's a real mixture as well.
So that's just a kind of a quick overview of how recording has changed, and I just wanted to give you an inside bird's eye view.
And we can use more mics now too.
Well, we can many more mics
many
we wanted
mics.
to.
Yeah.
So it's a question of we've got all these tools in the toolbox. What can we use? Which tools do we need to actually make the song work?
Exactly.
And that's an advantage of being as old as we are.
And
we know.
Spent some time doing it.
Well, we spent some time
trial
doing
and error.
And it reduces the trial and error because we pretty well know a lot of stuff that won't work.
Yeah.
And then we can immediately zoom into the stuff that will work. It's a much faster process,
and
I think.
The biggest thing to me is just to remember that there's no such thing as a perfect mix. And you're never going to be able to hear every single instrument perfectly. So what you have to do is pick the instruments that communicate the message of the song and give those the focus, and then everything else is kind of like icing on the cake.
So there's a quick snapshot of recording technology a la 2012.
Yes.
So joeystuckey.com, by the way, if you want to check out more about this guy.
And I must say, your class is very attractive looking.
I'm thinking that's a good time to say bye.
Bye.